80% of us in a crisis become bewildered, we're in a stupor, we don't take action. What are the secrets of the world's most effective survivors, and how can we, the rest of us, get some of what they've got?
In the first 5 minutes, this guy says, my wrist hurt from being handcuffed last night when the police took me in, and I'm a drug addict, and I had a child, had a child with a 15-year-old girl, and she dates him for years.
From the famous Acme Theater in Hollywood, it's the Gregory Mantell Show.
Today, what does it take to survive life's greatest challenges? What kind of people survive when others fail or give up? Ben Sherwood is here with the answers. He's the author of The Survivors Club, The Secrets and Signs That Could Save Your Life. He's a former executive producer of Good Morning America and senior producer for NBC Nightly News. And then, what does it take to survive a bad boyfriend? Barbara Davilman and Liz Dubelman, authors of What Was I Thinking? 58 Bad Boyfriend Stories, join us. But first up, Ben Sherwood. Great to have you here today, Ben.
Nice to be here.
So I know on Good Morning America and NBC Nightly News, you always have all of these, if I may say so, crazy stories about people who survive plane crashes and getting hit by trucks. But then also you told me the other day on the phone when we were talking that in your personal life, you also started to see some people dealing with some pretty tough situations and coming through it. And that's what led you to come up with this book?
I wrote the book because I needed it in my own life, both working at Good Morning America and seeing that steady parade of survivors, people who were left for dead on Mount Everest, attacked by mountain lions, trapped in coal mines for 2 weeks and licking the rocks for water. I always wondered, how do those people do it? And how can I get some of what they've got? And then suddenly, I turned 30, 40, and friends and family members began dealing with all the things that we all have to deal with in life.
Yeah.
Health challenges, economic problems. And again, I wondered, what are the secrets of the world's most effective survivors? And how can we, the rest of us, get some of what they've got for the challenges that we face?
So what did you learn from doing this? I mean, what is the secret? How do people come through this? Are there certain physical or mental characteristics that carry across?
So the first thing is, I thought that these people were going to be different from you and me. That I would go meet a woman left for dead in Central Park after she was brutally beaten by a gang, and that she would somehow be some kind of superhero. It turns out that these incredible survivors, the ones we read about, aren't that different from you and me. They're just like us. It's just that they have been tested in ways we haven't, and they know what they've got inside them. And every single survivor told me, and this is interviews around the world, they say the same thing, different ways, but they say the same thing, which is that we're all stronger than we know. We have more inside of us than we realize. It's just waiting to come out. Ambassador Bruce Langan, who was the longest ranking US diplomat in Iran during the 444-day hostage crisis, he said that we're like tea bags. We don't know how strong we are until we get into hot water. And that's sort of one of the ideas of the Survivors Club. We're stronger than we know until we get tested.
Well, and that's one thing you mentioned in the book, is that a lot of people think that, when something really awful happens, that the natural tendency is most people just fall apart. But apparently that kind of panic response really isn't the way that most people...
One of the great myths, you nailed it, one of the great myths of survival is the myth of panic. That somehow when bad things happen, we all run around like chickens with their heads cut off. Somehow we engage in thoughtless, groundless, irrational behavior. Experts have studied disasters going back 100 years, and they've found that almost without exception, that kind of irrational, hysterical behavior almost never happens in a crisis. It almost never occurs. That's the myth that Hollywood perpetuates. It's the myth from disaster movies. But when planes crash, when the ground shakes, when floods and tornadoes and all kinds of disasters happen, very rarely do you experience that kind of panic that we see in the movies.
Well, you mentioned plane crashes. And of course, that's been back in the news lately with, unfortunately, the Continental plane that crashed in Buffalo. People always want to know what's the safest place to sit in the plane. And I've read some of those studies over the years. And I know you talk about that, some of the book.
So I've always been afraid of flying. And I have an elaborate ritual when I get on a plane. I tap the door, I say various things to keep the plane in the sky once we take off. So that superstitious behavior just sort of was washed away when I went to the airplane crash evacuation course in Oklahoma City, where they teach a master class in how to survive plane crashes. And there are a couple facts that they teach you. First, 96% of the people involved in airplane accidents survive. 96%.
That's amazing, because most people just think that if a plane goes down, you're dead. So
Wrong.
actually most people...
96% of the passengers in airplane crashes in the last 30 years have survived. Of the most serious crashes, so the ones where there's a loss of life or injury, 76% of those passengers survive. So your chances of making it through a plane crash, 3/4 of the time you're going to walk out of that plane crash, even if it's a serious one.
Actually a lot better than people think.
Where should you sit? Front of the plane, back of the plane, on the wing. Turns out, forget about the front, the back, or the middle. The most important fact is sit within 5 rows of an exit, any exit. Because when they've looked at the seating chart of a plane, and they've looked at where the people who lived and the people who died were sitting on plane crashes, they found that 5 rows is sort of the cutoff for people to be able to move in a fuel-fed fire in an emergency. So if you're within that 5 rows, you have a much better chance of getting out one of those exits than if it's further than 5 rows. So I always count the number of rows to the exit. I always ask to sit within 5 rows of the exit, and that's the best place to sit on a plane.
Well, and that's the thing, that a lot of times there is a fire and a crash, and if you're not near the, people burn up.
Gregory, you have 90 seconds. 90 seconds to get off a plane when there's a fire. Here's why. Within 90 seconds, those gas tanks on the wings, that fire catches, it can burn through the aluminum skin of the plane and turn the fuselage in 90 seconds into a 2,000-degree inferno when flashover takes place, which is everything bursts into flame. So you have 90 seconds. Now, 90 seconds, that's about as long as I've taken to answer this question. 90 seconds is really, really fast. And when we went through the evacuation course, we got off in 2 minutes and 30 seconds, went through the smoke, jumped down those chutes. We were all high-fiving each other in Oklahoma City. We got off, we're okay. Instructor comes over with a stopwatch and says, "You'd all be dead."
You're dead.
Do it
And
again.
most people don't even pay attention to where the exit rows are, or the whole safety briefing.
So next time you get on a plane, just look around.
I'm paying attention.
Most people have their earphones on for their iPods. They got their shoes off. Some people have those bandanas on or those blindfolds to go to sleep. And basically they're treating it like a bus ride or, time for a nap. The first 3 minutes and the last 8 minutes of a flight, that's when 80% of the accidents happen. And during that time, you shouldn't be blindfolded. You shouldn't be unable to hear instructions from the flight attendants. You shouldn't have your shoes off because you may have to run across a burning field of gasoline. You should be ready to go, ready for action.
And it's usually young, slender guys who escape, statistically, is that?
So, here I am, 6'4", and, got a little bit of a tummy. And I asked the FAA, who survives plane crashes? I asked the experts on plane crash survival, who are the best survivors in plane crashes? And the woman who, expert on all the statistics, says to me, slender young men. I'm thinking, shoot. Slender young men are the best airplane crash survivors because they can wriggle their way through wreckage, they're very agile, and they have more strength. Who's at greatest risk? Older, wider women. Older, wider women. Now, that doesn't mean older, wider women are doomed on planes. It just means that they should be aware of the fact that they should try to sit near what are called the floor exits. Those are those big doors at the front and the back of the plane where typically you get on and off the plane. It's much easier to get through those exits in an emergency than that little hole cut into the side of the plane at the wing that's called the overwing exit. So front and back are good for older, wider women, and the rest of the plane, good place for a young, agile male.
We'll be right back. And we are back with Ben Sherwood, author of The Survivors Club. Well, I want to believe in mind over matter. That the will to live. If you have a bad illness or something, that the power of positive thinking, that will make a difference. Does it make a difference?
So we all want to believe that. We all want to believe that our friend Susie, who has that fighting spirit, when she gets breast cancer, she's going to beat that breast cancer. And we all want to believe that grandma lived to 99 because she was a fighter. When you talk to the experts who've studied the will to live, here's what they say. The will to live won't make you live forever, and it won't actually make you live longer than the biology of your cancer or whatever you're dealing with is going to determine. The will to live will increase the quality of the life that you have. It'll increase the way you live your life. Here's the surprise. the absence of the will to live, being helpless or hopeless in the face of breast cancer or in the face of other challenges, that definitely will decrease your longevity in your life. So it's not so much the presence of the will to live that makes you beat something like breast cancer. It's the absence of the will to live. It's that helpless hopelessness that reduces your chances of living as long as you could with whatever you face.
Yeah, and we were talking beforehand, because you hear that, you'll hear, they lost the will to live.
Yeah. And there is a lot of data that shows that people can choose the time of their death almost by giving up. That is, they almost sort of let go at a particular point because they've just lost that will to be there. It's not that the will to live makes you win, it's that the hopelessness and helplessness can make you lose.
Now, when you talk about specific dates, because sometimes you'll hear too, like, they died the day after their birthday or the day after the wedding or something. Can you postpone death?
There's a researcher at UC San Diego who has studied millions of death records, and he's found that people can actually time their deaths within a few months, can time their deaths to important birthdays, important holidays, Christmas, Yom Kippur, and important events, national elections. So when you look at all the national elections, for instance, going back over the last 100 years, there's a little spike in the death rate right after the election because people really want to exercise their most sacred right. And if you look at the death rate after holidays, major holidays, according to this expert at San Diego, there's a little spike in the death rate for people who held on to be there for that important milestone and then let go.
What is the biggest mistake that most people make in these situations? Is there something that, because for instance, a lot of times, and well, you say this in the book, I think, that when there's a major disaster, say 9/11, people are waiting for instructions. Like the voice is going to come down from on high and say, okay, get up out of your seat, run for the exit. And a lot of times, there's nothing.
So, interviewing hundreds of survivors around the world, experts on survivorship, going to military survival training with the Navy and the Air Force, here's what I learned. Survival is a mindset. It's a way of looking at the world. And the question is, how much do you want to live? How much do you want to beat the odds? We as humans divide into three groups. 10% of us are leaders who in a crisis, an emergency, see clearly, act decisively, and we typically can save ourselves and others. 80% of us, and I put myself in that group, 80% of us in a crisis become bewildered, we're in a stupor, we don't take action, and we wait for someone, a doctor, a flight attendant, a policeman, a fireman, someone to tell us what to do. And 10% of us do the wrong thing in a crisis. We're troublemakers. We engage in self-destructive, counterproductive behavior. So the question I asked in the Survivors Club was, how can I, and everybody I know who I think are in the middle 80%, how can we move ourselves up into the 10% who are leaders? Right. And the answer is to flip the switch. That is, know in a crisis that you're likely to become bewildered, but then say, I'm not doing what I need to be doing. What should I be doing right now? And flip the switch from inaction to action. And all the experts say that you can do that that's a learnable thing, that you can improve your chances in any crisis by flipping the switch.
And you kind of found out firsthand when you were writing the book, because you had a situation where your burglar alarm went off.
Yes.
And even then, even though you're supposed to be the expert on surviving, you were kind of like waiting a little bit, like, what's going on?
So Gregory, I shamed myself in front of my wife because it's 2 o'clock in the morning. I've written the book. I've been through all this survival
training.
You're the expert. I'm the expert, and at 2 o'clock in the morning, the burglar alarm goes off. I sit up in bed, and I do everything wrong. I'm uncommunicative with my wife. I freeze. I think I'm trying to hear.
Did you send her to go look at it? Honey, go find out what happened.
Fortunately, thank goodness I didn't have that impulse. But I didn't do anything. And later, I did what I was supposed to do, which is when the cop showed up, I went down into the front yard, and in my shorts and t-shirt in the middle of the night, 2 o'clock in the morning, with my notepad, I interviewed the Los Angeles Police Department officers about what to do in the event that your alarm goes off in the middle of the night. Now, in our case, first thing is, make sure you closed all the doors, because I had left our kitchen door open, and it had blown open in the wind and set off the alarm. Second, barricade yourself. Don't go looking for trouble. Barricade yourself with the people you love, and wait for the alarm and wait for somebody to come.
Because there might be somebody there
And
with a gun.
And particularly in this economy, the police officer said, that in this economy, you don't know who's going to be in your house, and you don't know what they're going to be on, drugs, alcohol. So it's best to barricade yourself, don't go looking for trouble, don't turn off the alarm, wait for someone to come help you, or wait for someone to call and for someone to come from outside to make sure that you're okay.
And so you made some adjustments then after that. I mean, so now you're ready for next time.
I'm ready for next time. And I think that survival is about using each opportunity to learn. Survivors are learners. They grab a hold of little pieces of information in their lives, and then you never know when that little piece of information is relevant. So for instance, the viewers of your program, who knows when they're going to be in a crisis? Who knows when the burglar alarm will go off in the middle of the night? But they will remember, and many survivors told me stories where, for instance, when they ejected, going Mach 1 speed in an F-15 over the Atlantic, bailed out, blasted by the wind forces, every limb broken in their bodies, hit the water, suddenly everything gets phosphorescent and glowing. This pilot said to me, I thought I had a brain injury. But then I remembered, there in the Atlantic, that I had seen a Discovery Channel show about ocean phosphorescence. And if you disturb the plankton and sea life, it creates this glow. And so in that moment, I remembered the Discovery show, and I knew I didn't have a brain injury, and then I had to get into that life raft and save my life. And so he's a survivor, and he's a learner, and he uses information that he pulls from all over the place to keep going forward and to stay alive.
Well, in an emergency, Ben, people will remember you from the Survivors Club. We're almost out of time, but one thing, people, faith. How much will religion or faith get you through it? Will that save you?
So I was skeptical. I'm a journalist, and I am sort of a very secular person. But everyone I interviewed, time and again, said that faith was the most universal survival tool and the most powerful. Of the 6 billion people on Earth, 5 billion belong to organized religion, 5 billion people pray, and 5 billion people rely on faith to get them through the toughest times. And so there's a chapter in this book that explores why, for instance, people who go to church once a week live 7 years longer than people who don't go to church.
7 years longer.
Faith and religion are very powerful.
I think I better start going next week. Thank you very much,
Thank
Ben
you, Gregory.
Sherwood. The book is The Survivors Club. We'll be right back and find out how to survive a bad boyfriend. And we are back, and joining me now are Barbara Davilman and Liz Dubelman, authors of What Was I Thinking? 58 Bad Boyfriend Stories. Great to have you here today.
Nice to meet you.
Barbara.
Hi, Greg.
Okay, so Liz, you knew it was over when you got the call from the psychologist telling you that you needed to get the hell out?
Yeah, because that's how dense I was. I have 2 stories in the book, and one of them was about a kleptomaniac, and I kept trying to fix him. He would bring me home these presents, and I didn't know where they came from, and I chose
But it must be great for gift giving, though. Or, I mean, receiving, though. Dating a klepto, I never thought of that.
Well, yeah. We actually got a surprising amount of stories from women who had boyfriends that were kleptomaniacs that either stole from them or stole from other people and gave it to them.
Receiving is better than
much
taking
better.
From, but it was a problem. So he was coming home with stuff.
And I thought, well, this is strange, and he seems a little distant, and he has this sort of sense of entitlement, but I can fix this, you know? And I had moved to Los Angeles for him, so I thought, I have to fix him because I have no life, you know, without that. And it took a call from a psychiatrist, which I understand they're not supposed to do.
Because you got to couples counseling or something when there were some issues.
And the guy said, I don't know how to tell you this more plainly than this. You need to leave.
You need to leave. And did you leave?
And I did leave.
You did leave.
I did leave. I mean, even I am not that dense. I knew that much. I knew I needed to leave then.
But is that one of the common problems? So, you know, when you said you thought you could, honestly, I think one of the basic differences between men and women in dating, and I really think this is true, you can tell me it's a stereotype or what you think of it, but women always think the guy will change or they can change the guy. I don't think guys think that about women or even expect to change, but women always think the guy will change or think they can change it, and the guy is not going to change. People don't change.
People don't
Not
change.
that quickly.
People don't change, and we have this theory that people tell you who they really are in the first 5 minutes if you're willing to listen.
And a lot of people don't listen?
A lot of people don't want to listen. A lot of people really want to be loved. They want to be in a relationship. They just hear what they want to hear in order to get into it and be loved. And then they're in it, and then all of a sudden, the things that they didn't see that were there, they start seeing them.
Ignoring a lot of red flags along the way.
Huge red flags.
Yeah, there's a woman who her name is Rachel Resnick, and she wrote a story called Blind Date. And in the first 5 minutes, this guy says, my wrist hurt from being handcuffed last night when the police took me in, and I'm a drug addict, and I had a child, with a 15-year-old girl, and she dates him for years.
Years.
But now you said, though, you had, if I may say so, the one-night stand that turned into a 3.5-year relationship that shouldn't have been.
Tortured relationship.
Shouldn't have been.
Yes. Yes.
So what happens?
What happens with that? Well,
I mean, it
in for a penny, in for a pound. We started out because he came into my house. It was after a long date. I was exhausted, and I didn't know how to ask him to leave. My mother never taught me how to say, "Good night, I have to go to sleep now." And so I thought, well, if I sleep with him, I can get to sleep. So I slept with him, and then I guess one thing led to another, and we were in this relationship, and it was just tortured.
I like the way you blamed your mother.
Well, that's
That was
easy.
nice.
But you said, later she looked at you something like, and just said, "Honey, he doesn't love you."
What she did say was, "You're dating the wrong brother," because she liked his brother better.
Oh.
Yeah, no, he doesn't love you, and yeah, great, thanks, Mom. Where were you 3 years ago?
But now you mentioned, so you had all kinds of crazy stories, like you said, the criminal boyfriends, the porn star boyfriend, the gay boyfriend, just everything.
We have probably got 300 stories in. We keep getting stories in. We have a website, Come to Your Senses Day, which is a day that we rediscovered, which is a day after Valentine's Day, when women get up and they tell their stories about their relationships and try to figure out if they're working or not. And so people still send us in stories.
Well, and because you've both been careful I noticed you say in interviews, that it's not male bashing. And when I heard Rachel's story that you mentioned, I think when she was at Borders, I think, and read that. And what I kept thinking was, that, as you said, really the women are a part of this. It's not just the guys, because in her case, or the one woman, I think it was her, quit her job and followed the guy across the country, and then later started to resent him or said, it's all about him. But I thought, well, lady, you quit your job and you're following him around the country. What do you expect?
That's what we discovered, is that women will twist themselves into a pretzel to be loved and to be in a relationship. So women will contort themselves.
And they'll accept the unacceptable, and they'll make excuses, and they'll look away, and they'll pretend it doesn't matter, and it really does. And then eventually they just can't take it anymore, and that's that moment.
You come to
in the
what
book.
was I thinking?
What was I thinking?
And you say actually that the idea for the book came about, I believe, someone was in your office.
Yes, somebody was it was actually my boss, and it was her birthday, and she
Oh.
was really looking forward to that night because she had convinced herself that her boyfriend of about 3 or 4 years was going to propose. He was going to pop the question. And she came back the next day and she was in tears because not only did he not pop the question, but he gave her a gift certificate for a massage. Now,
It's
kind of not a sucky gift, not a sucky gift, but when you're expecting to be proposed to, it's not quite the same. So we tried to make excuses for him, saying, "Oh my God, he's just a really bad gift giver, and don't take it personally. It's not about your relationship, it's just about him," and all that. She said, "Nope, I'm done." And with that, we all started dragging out the moment we knew our relationships were over. And some of the women actually remembered those moments more vividly than the relationship itself, because it was so profound a moment.
And so she left the guy?
Oh yeah.
Okay. And now, have you gotten past the "what was I thinking" moments? Have you found?
Yes, we're both happily married.
Happily married,
not
okay.
to each other. We're both happily married to.
Okay, well, let's just check it.
I've been married almost 15 years, and I have a 10-year-old daughter. And she sometimes asks me how you know the difference between a "what was I thinking" moment and he's just having a bad day. And I tell her that you have to listen to that little voice inside yourself. And when you feel that you're really uncomfortable, that's a sign. He's not just having a bad day. It's just he wants you to change yourself and to be someone different.
And that's the other part of the equation. If you find yourself becoming somebody you don't recognize or somebody you don't like anymore, that's not good.
Trying to
either.
change for him.
Whatever,
Or
in
the
order
other
to stay in
To-
it.
to stay in
Just
it,
to
to
stay in
stay-
it, you
to be
become,
loved.
yeah, you become a person you don't recognize anymore. And that's when, rather than put the emphasis on him, keep it on you. Are you the same person you are when you started this relationship?
But so you went from what was I thinking to you found Mr. Right, though. So there is a happy ending there. and
Oh,
you can't get
big
past
time.
Absolutely.
that.
I think most of the women.
Yeah,
These
which
were
is
just,
nice.
Yeah, these were just relationships that didn't work out.
Well, in our final moment, do you have any parting words of wisdom for the women who are out there facing the dating scene, or your daughters? I mean, what would you know?
I would say don't date a porn star.
Don't date
Don't
a
date-
porn star. You can sleep with him, but just don't.
Don't
You
look
heard
for,
it here first.
don't sleep with the, don't date a porn star as a serious relationship.
Right.
All right, words of advice today. Don't date a porn star. Thank you very much.
So
Ms.
nice to meet you.
Dubelman and Barbara Davilman.
Thank you, Greg.
The book is What Was I Thinking? 58 Bad Boyfriend Stories. Don't date a porn star. We'll see you next time. Thanks everybody for watching.